Okay, so Wanheng Menayothin of Thailand successfully defends his WBC World Minimumweight Championship. 105 pounds, 105-pound champion, guy that's pretty much the consensus number one of the division. Fought Saul Juarez of Mexico, a guy that's managed to defeat a number of notable fighters, especially a couple of former champions from 105 through 112 pounds. He's been a little bit of a floater. He's a guy that's fought between all three of the main weight classes down at flyweight and below. But he just came up a tad short against Wanheng Menayothin in spite of a pretty good start. This was a pretty good fight as well. This is a bit of a more tactical fight, however. A lot more with timing, with foot placement, movement, and hand placement. A lot of very technical stuff that was going on in the ring. Round one between these two was very much a feel-out round. Oh yeah, by the way, before I actually get into the round-by-round action, as usual, especially with these fights from Thailand, the link to the full fight is going to be right there in the description, so give it a chance, check it out, and enjoy some solid boxing action here midweek. So yeah, the first round wound up being a little bit of a feel-out round. Both guys were kind of trying to stick the jab. Menayothin is very much an expert with the jab. He has a very stiff jab, stiff right hands coming up behind it. Looks to set up his combinations off of it. Saul Juarez, the jab tends to be a little bit more of like a slapping type of shot, a little bit more of a range-finding throwaway type of shot that he's looking to set up combinations behind, more of the 3, 4, 5 punch combination variety behind the jab. And in the first round, I thought Saul Juarez was able to just get a little bit of an edge. He had the faster hands, the faster feet. He's a little bit shorter than Menayothin, so in spite of the fact that he had possibly a little bit of a height and reach disadvantage, he was able to kind of negate that. But the first round, technically speaking, could have either been a draw, or I felt that Juarez edged it out. So I scored that one for Juarez. Round two. Juarez started to throw those patented 1, 2, 3 type combos that he's used to throwing. A lot of times he'll start it with a jab. Other times he'll start it with a hook. It'll be a hook right hand, then the hook to the body, or sometimes he'll start with the hook to the body, then go upstairs. One particular 1-2 from Menayothin, however, managed to snap Juarez's head back. But for the most part, that was almost the only real notable combination that Menayothin landed. He was mainly landing one shot at a time, whether it was a left jab or a right cross, whether it was over the jab of Juarez or just a lead right hand. But overall, Juarez seemed to kind of outwork him and outland him in the round. So I scored round 2 for Juarez as well. Round 3, Menayothin was looking to try and land a little bit more, throw a little bit more. But Juarez was doing a very good job of, when he was throwing his combos, he was kind of ducking along with throwing his punches. So it's like he'd be throwing the punches and ducking at the same time, so that Menayothin's shots were kind of going over his head. He was using his shortness to his advantage, incidentally. He would throw maybe a 1-2 or a 1-2-3, and he'd be ducking down low and would be able to just kind of bob and weave from the inside all the way back outside in order to keep Menayothin from really getting a beat on him consistently. Menayothin was able to land a few shots of his own, but overall I thought Juarez controlled this round for the most part. So now I had Juarez 3 up in the fight. Menayothin definitely wasn't completely out of the fight, though. He was very competitive in all 3 of these rounds so far. Round 4, Menayothin landed a very, very clean 1-2 early on in the round as Juarez was pulling back. Juarez was landing some combos here and there, but it seemed like his combos were a little bit more slappy with Menayothin. He started really sitting down on his punches and trying to land with authority, and he was able to land more consistently in this round as well. It seemed like once he started to sit down on his punches and really put more leverage into him, the timing kind of came along with it. It wasn't just he was either sacrificing the timing for the power or the power for the timing. It's like they kind of both came on like almost like a light switch right at the same time. So he was able to land much more cleanly, more consistently, and with more power in the 4th round. So that was the first round I wound up giving to him. So by this time I had it 39-37 for Juarez. Round 5, Menayothin started landing even more cleanly and more hard, while Juarez was still landing a little bit more of a slappish nature of shots. He was still landing combos. Menayothin was really getting the timing down pat Juarez was trying to catch him on the inside of shots, but as he was pulling out, Menayothin started being able to time when Juarez was weaving out of or trying to weave out of range, and he was able to actually catch Juarez on the end of a number of shots. So he landed a few head snappers where Juarez was able to evade him before. Menayothin had him timed a lot better by the 5th round. So Menayothin started really catching up, gave him the 5th round. Round 6 was a little bit more of the same. Menayothin was still more accurate. Juarez was throwing a little bit more volume. This was a little bit of a swing round. I think you could have given it to Juarez, but personally I gave it to Menayothin. So by through the 6th round, I now had it tied up. Round 7, Menayothin was very much in control. Won the 7th round, I think, more clearly than he had the 6th. It was a little bit closer to the 5th round with regards to action. Menayothin was landing the sharper shots. Juarez was still trying to land, in combination, but he was landing without a lot of leverage on his punches. It's almost like he was really trying to just land quickly and get out of range, but in doing that, he really sacrificed his own timing and his own leverage and power on his shots, whereas Menayothin really had a lot more on each individual shot. He was making each one count. Juarez was almost looking for volume a little bit more, but he wasn't necessarily even landing as cleanly due to that. Round 8 was another close round. Personally, I thought Menayothin nicked that one as well. Slightly cleaner work overall. Juarez was still trying to get a beat on him. Menayothin landed a couple of particularly head-snapping jabs and right hands, so I thought that he managed to take that one. Round 9, Juarez came out a little bit more aggressively. Menayothin seemed a little bit more defensive. He was only throwing 1s and 1-2s. I thought he was still the sharper of the two, so I gave that one to him. Round 10, a little bit more of the same as round 9. Menayothin a lot more defensive, high guard, 1s and 1-2s. Just was able to outland with accuracy. Juarez, gave that one to him. Round 11 and 12, Juarez, I wound up giving to him because I thought he was landing better and with more volume. It almost seemed like Menayothin gave the last couple of rounds away because he knew he was up on the scorecards. Thing is that the WBC had open scoring for this fight, and through the first 4 rounds, it was basically a draw. But through 8 rounds, Menayothin was comfortably ahead on all 3 scorecards. He was basically ahead. I think it was by 2-on-1, by 4-on-1, and by 3-on-1. So by that time, once he pretty much just only needed 1 or 2 more rounds in the bank before he could give the last 2 rounds away, which is kind of what he wound up doing. Juarez actually came out more aggressively, especially in the last 3 rounds. And even though I thought he came up a little bit short in the 10th, I thought that he won the 11th and the 12th. I thought that he came out with a good aggression, good speed, and good combination punching, and I gave both of the last 2 rounds to him, both the 11th and the 12th. But unfortunately, even on my card, that wasn't quite enough for him. I thought that Menayothin won the fight 115-113. The official judges had it a bit wider. It was, let me see if I can find the scores here. It was 115-113, 116-112, and 116-113, all from Menayothin. But unfortunately, it seemed like the open scoring somewhat took a little bit of the drama out of a fight that I think probably could have been a little bit more heated going into the last 4 rounds, especially because it seemed like both of them had a lot left in the tank. This is, one of those fights that you could have easily seen being a 15-rounder because both guys still had plenty of energy left in the late rounds. Both were very sharp still in the late rounds. And, they could have thrown a lot more than they had been, both in the last half and in the later rounds altogether. But with this, Menayothin racks up his 43rd victory now. He's now 43-0 with 17 knockouts. He's starting to knock on that door of, I guess, what you might call the TBE record, so to speak. How Floyd Mayweather is often referred to with himself, with Rocky Marciano. In spite of the fact that, there's a few other guys that could lay claim to that and beyond, the likes of Chavez or Ricardo Lopez, for instance. But Menayothin is getting up into that range. It's not just Roman Gonzalez who's knocking on that door, as well as Floyd Mayweather, should he happen to come back for a comeback fight. but he's getting up in there, and especially because Menayothin tends to be a little bit more active. He's already had 3 fights this year in 2016, so I'd imagine he may have one more before the year is over. And Saul Juarez actually happened to be his mandatory. He was the #1 contender for this belt. So it's looking like, if anything, there may be a possibility of a unification, if not him fighting one of his basically just the top 15 contenders. And there's a number of these guys that I wouldn't mind seeing him fight. Knockout CP Freshmart, the WBA champion, would be an excellent fight, an excellent all-Thailand showdown. Knockout CP Freshman is coming off of a couple of excellent wins. He defeated Carlos Buitrago and defeated Baron Rojas right after Rojas pulled off the big upset of Hecky Butler in order to unify the WBA titles into one full WBA championship. There's also Jose Argumedo, who is the IBF champion, who managed to defeat the vaunted Katsunari Takayama, the former unified strawweight champion, the last unified 105-pound champion that there's ever been at this weight class. The WBO title, however, is vacant because Kosei Tanaka wound up moving up in weight to 108 pounds. He vacated the title. The WBO still hasn't filled that vacancy, so that's still wide open. But for Wanheng Menayothin, if he were to unify against Knockout CP Freshmart or Jose Argumedo, either of those fights would be excellent fights. You know, those 3 guys are basically the top 3 fighters in the division, the clear top 3 of the division. All 3 of them have big-time signature wins that are pretty much equally matched with each other. Menayothin over Juarez in particular, Knockout CP Freshman over Rojas in particular, and Jose Argumedo over Katsunari Takayama in particular. 3 big-time wins over very high-level opponents. Hecky Butler, should he happen to stay at 105 pounds, is still out there. I think could still give a lot of difficulty to any of those guys, in spite of the fact that I think all of their styles would pose a major problem for him. They're all very sharpshootery type styles, and especially Argumedo with a volumetric type of style against Butler, who tends to be a lot more of a stylist pot shotter, would be very difficult. Although I think Butler would provide a lot of difficulty for the likes of Menayothin and Freshmart, since they tend to like to throw one shot at a time, and Butler's game is really to try and get you to throw one shot at a time and try to counter over those single shots. Carlos Buitrago, I think, would be an excellent matchup for Menayothin as well, should he not happen to unify, because Buitrago had 2 very tough fights with Knockout CP Freshmart. I thought that Buitrago kind of got possibly robbed in the first one. I thought that he probably should have won that first fight. I did think that he gave the second fight away. Just didn't quite have the stamina to keep up with Freshmart in the second fight, so Freshmart won the second one clearly on my card. But I think it'd be an excellent comparison fight to have for him and Menayothin. Menayothin has a very similar style to Freshmart as well. I think he has a little bit more accuracy on his shots, but isn't quite as high volume or high energy as Knockout CP Freshmart, however. Byron Rojas as well, another Nicaraguan that Knockout CP Freshmart has fought. It'd be an interesting comparison fight for Wanheng Menayothin to fight against. And then there's also Simpiwe Konko of South Africa, who's another guy that had given Hecky Butler a hell of a fight before Butler wound up getting upset by Rojas. I think would be an excellent fight for Menayothin as well. Just a tough inside fighter, brawler type of style. Good boxing skills as well, however. Very high energy fighter. And I mean that's for the most part the major guys that I could imagine coming up and competing against Menayothin. Who else may wind up figuring in here? Ray Loreto, if he happens to come back to 105, I think he's a guy that definitely deserves a shot at a title either at 108 or 105. He's another guy kind of like Saul Juarez that's been a bit of a floater between the divisions, and I think he's a very explosive puncher and a guy that's knocked off a couple of former champions in a way that even some of the current champions haven't necessarily. So I think he's another guy that definitely deserves a shot, and I'd love to see him against Menayothin. I think he could be a bit of a dark horse type of opponent that could potentially not necessarily be heralded coming into the fight, but could be one of the toughest opponents when they actually get in the ring. But that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Menayothin with an excellent win. Hopefully we see him again before the year is out. And that's it for this one, y'all. Peace.